Alright, now we have Leonard Dan. We're sitting around the fire up in Red Valley in Arizona, just outside of Farmington, New Mexico, and this is the home of, we refer to him as Chief Leonard Dan, because he's the most knowledgeable person we've met here. Knows about the history of the area. He grew up on this mountain right where we are now. His family farm is about 3/4 of a mile from here. And he grew up as a child all through these mountains, these woods, and knows them very well. And we've been very fortunate in that he's been willing to share some of the stories of his youth with us here, growing up here as a Native American. And these are the kinds of stories that I think people need to hear. They need to know what life was like here, what these people lived. And so he's agreed to let me film him tonight as he shares some of the stories with us around the campsite, here around the campfire. So I'm just going to let him share stories with us.
Okay, like I was saying, I grew up in this area. I was born in a hospital in Shiprock. It's about 40 miles from here. That's the nearest hospital. That was the nearest hospital at the time. So I was born just right at the end of the Depression era. And I remember my mother had to work in Farmington. That was the nearest town or big settlement there, where there was jobs. And she worked in a hospital as a cook for the patients. And so she couldn't very well take care of me because, I was small. And I guess she put me here with my grandparents when I was about like 2 years old. And so I didn't get to see my mother for about maybe six months out of the year, maybe twice a year. So it went on like that. And when she came, she bought me a lot of clothes and hat and shirt, shoes and stuff like that. And she would also buy like cloth and also coats for my grandfather and my grandmother. So that's how she took care of us. And that was the most happiest time of my life, was being here with my grandparents. I learned a lot from them. Stories that were told around the campfire, and after each supper we would all gather around my grandfather and grandmother. We would tell us a story, about the things that had happened, or the things that we should know, or so they taught us a lot. And there's me, my cousins, there's 2 girls. I was the only boy at the time. And when I was 5 years old, in 1942, a truck came by, and they were rounding up all the Navajo kids so that they could attend school to learn the English and how to live like on the outside world. We always say the outside world. So I got put in the back of a pickup truck. I had no choice but to get in. I didn't have no clothes, and all I had was wearing was what I was wearing. So they told me, "You don't need anything. We'll give you clothes over there and shoes. And we'll fix you up nice." I guess I was kind of. My hair was long, and So when I got in the truck, I noticed some of the kids were crying, the girls and the boys, and I really fought mine and to hold back my tears, and I didn't cry. And the journey took all day from 10 o'clock until we got there probably about 6 in the afternoon. And they took us to the dining hall and they fed us. And when we got through, they herded us. We had to march, from the smallest size on up to the larger size. So I was kind of like the fourth kid, I guess. I was, a little bigger. And they gave all of us haircuts. They took all the hair off our heads, and they made us strip from our reservation clothes that we had, and they gathered those up and dumped it in the trash. And they gave us blue coveralls, all of us. I remember that, and long johns, and we had government shoes and socks, stuff like that. And we all took a bath. Some of the kids, they didn't know. For some reason, I kind of knew what taking a bath was. Because my mom, when she came, she would say, you need a bath. So I learned a lot. Or they kind of knew, how things worked, when I went to school. And we got assigned to the beds, where we would sleep. And some of the kids, the bed was too soft for them. So what they did was they just took their blanket off and crawled under the bed on the floor. And that's how they slept. They weren't used to sleeping on soft, real nice soft bed. So they all slept on the floor. And we were punished for doing that. And we learned how to brush our teeth and keep our hands clean, wash all the time. Then they would march us like soldiers to the dining hall. And we had to keep a straight line. If you kind of stepped out of the way, you would get a spanking with a belt. Nowadays you can't do that. But at that time, we really got punished. They would make us stand in the hall or in a corner, maybe 4 or 5 hours, at a time. And that's how we were punished. And if we didn't behave or we didn't mind we used to call them house parents, when they used to watch us, these workers. If we didn't mind them, that's how we were punished. We were made to stand in the corner or to kneel down on the hard floor with our knees. And if we fall over or change our positions, they tell us, come back the next day. You're gonna still keep on doing it till you learn how to stand on your knees, or to stand with your arms out like this in the hallway. And if you drop it, the next day you have to do it again. That's how the type of rules that we went through, at a young age. So it was devastating. Some of the kids, they cried and cried, and we stayed up there the whole 9 months. There was no such thing as a vacation or to go up there to visit us. So we just had to suffer, I guess you'd say. That's how we went to school, some of us, those that are my age.
So, Leonard, what would happen if you spoke your own language in those schools?
Oh, they would give us a small bar of soap, and they tell us to eat it. And, you know, we would take a little bite of it and then we'd try to chew it and swallow it. And some of the kids just couldn't take it. And me, I was kind of, without chewing it, I just swallowed the whole thing, What can happen? The worst thing is, I guess they can kill me if that happens. So that's how I thought of school at that time.
So school was not a pleasant experience.
At the time, no, it wasn't a good experience. But through the years, probably about 1950, things began to change a little bit. They were more. They told them not to really punish the kids like they used to way before. So, and then nowadays, in the 50s, that totally changed. And the little kids, they were treated real nice with respect and all that, and because they told them the government was the one that set up the rules. Bureau of Indian Affairs. So they went by whatever they told them, so we could very well sue the house parents at the time. So
Now, did they ever mix children from different tribes in these schools?
yes, we had different tribes like the Navajos, and the Utes, and the Pueblos, and some of the Plains Indians, like the Cheyennes and the Kiowas, and they bused them all the way up to here to Colorado, and we all went to school together.
So I know by your earlier story that the Utes were your enemies.
Yes, there was a lot of fights between the tribes at the time in the schools. The Navajos would fight the Utes, or the Plains Indians and the Pueblos. So I kept getting punished, for the things that I never really done. I did, I was a good kid, I guess. I know I was, And so one time they punished me for not making my bed. I guess some kid went and sat on my bed and left the wrinkles on it. And so me and several other little boys, we were small. And the grades there went from they used to call it beginners. I guess now they call it kindergarten.
Yes.
All the way up to the senior 12th grade age. They were bigger boys, kids. Us, we were small. So the punishment we got for our wrinkle bed was to run what they used to call belt line. Each kid would take their belt off, and even the seniors. And us little kids, we would run between the two lines, and each one took a strap at us with their belt. This was another form of punishment that they put on us.
And so some of these people in this belt line were your natural enemies.
Yeah.
So they didn't take it easy on you, did they?
No, and the bigger kids, they spanked us harder than the ones our age, So, and then another one type of punishment that we endured was we would stand like this with our hands on our knees like that. And each kid, starting from the small all the way up to the senior, they would kick us in the pants.
Ugh.
And some of the kids were injured, because they broke their tailbone, and they tried to report that, but they didn't do nothing about it. So that's another form of punishment, you know, that we all went through in boarding schools.
And yet, when you got through all that, you graduated.
From the same place. Well, things began to change when I got into like the 8th grade. Things were a lot better. We got better treatment,
And you went ahead and went to college, didn't you?
yes, after I got through high school, I went to Westminster College in Salt Lake City, and then University of Utah. And to me, when I was up there, it seemed to be easier than in high school or the grade school that I went through. You know, it was hard to learn the English language, and because I had my Navajo way of, you know, the culture. I was traditional, so.
Now, that brings up another good point I'd like you to explain a little bit. Where did the term Navajo come from?
The term Navajo came from the Spaniards, meaning knife, or I guess when they first came and saw the Navajos, they all carried knives, you know, stone knife made out of chert,
Yes.
and they were long. I guess that was their only weapon, and then they noticed it on their arrow, bow and arrow. So that's what it means, I guess. You know, knife.
And what is your traditional name for your people?
The name?
Yes.
We call ourselves Dene, meaning the people. Dene means 5 fingers. Even this Bigfoot, I think there's a name for it, but I haven't really heard. It's got 5 fingers too, so it's a type of human form, I guess you'd say, because they use their fingers and hands and to do stuff.
So how long have you been looking for this creature?
Probably about 5 years.
Yeah.
I first heard about it, you know, that they were here in our area. But I noticed that a lot of the calls and the whoops that they do, I used to hear those when I was a little boy on this farm down here with my grandpa. I'd ask my grandfather, I said, what are those? What's that noise? He used to say, oh, it's just coyotes, you know, they're playing around or mating, stuff like that. But when I got with Tom Biscardi and his crew, I noticed that they had some a tape and DVDs that they had. I heard those calls, and it brought me back to here. You know, I said, oh, I used to hear those even way back. So then I asked some of the elders, you know, what is Bigfoot? They said, oh, those things have been around for centuries, you know, here in our areas. You know. I guess they say one time that this family, they were starving. This was back in the 1800s, I guess. And they had no food, and there was hardly no game that year. And what happened was they were gathering nuts, pinon nuts in this area. Well, southeast of here, they call it Sanasti. That's a kind of a hot area too. And this woman left her little baby in a cradle board against a tree then. And I guess something got that baby and took it. And they looked everywhere for it. They even had these trackers come in and, look for it. But what they said was a bear took that baby in the cradle board and everything. And then this was my grandfather told me this story. He said it was something, a big being that took that baby. And what they did was raise that little girl. And one day this guy was riding his horse in the mountain looking for his horses, I guess. He came upon this little girl. He was sitting underneath one of these juniper trees. She was all naked and then long hair and stringy hair. She was about 10 years old by then. From the infant on all the way to 10 years old, that's how long she was missing. And this Navajo guy on horseback tried to talk to her. Hi, how are you? Are you lost? What's your name? Then that little girl, she didn't talk Navajo or anything. She's like that, in their own language. And then he took her and brought her back out, and they had a meeting there in that area, and they said, "Whose little girl is this?" Then the mother recognized her right away, because she had a sort of a birthmark on her shoulder. That's how she knew that was her missing baby. And everybody was happy that she returned, but they couldn't communicate with her. And they asked her, where you been? Who caught you? Where were you all these years? And she would only grunt and and kind of, I don't know. He told me, my grandfather told me that he was sounded like that, So they put her in school, tried to reteach her the language, of a Navajo. And when she became a teenager, I was already out of high school. I had graduated, and I was in Shiprock in one of the. They used to have a Navajo tribal fair in the fall, and then one of my friends said, "Oh, you know what? That little girl was taken by a creature, and those creatures raised her, and she couldn't talk." Then I said, "Oh, really?" Okay. I looked at her, and I was, staring at her, and she turned around and looked at me, and I just kind of smiled, So she was a nice-looking young lady by then. She was sort of pretty, but you could tell that there was a wildness about her, something that didn't look right. And then my friend said, "Yeah, she was abducted by some wild animals, and those animals raised her." So, oh, that's the one my grandfather was telling me about. So, could that be, I'm thinking back, could that be the one, what we're trying to look for here?
It could be.
It could be, yes.
I don't know.
Yeah, because the way if she was doing these calls, way at night, her mother would hear her whooping. And she would go outside and, whoop like the Bigfoots do.
Wow, that's an amazing story.
So, thinking, this is the first time I'm telling it, it's all coming back to me, slowly. I remember my grandfather here. And so that's why I'm sharing it. What I know about the history around here too. So that later years, people can say, oh, this is what happened on the Navajo reservation.
Well, I think it's important that the history be shared.
Oh yeah, I
because
like
so
to
many people don't know. They
share
just
my
don't know.
culture, and I know a lot of, because when I went to college, and a lot of people, my professors and my friends in school, they all asked me, what are the Navajos and who are they? And I tried to explain to them where I came from and how I grew up and the hardships I went through, stuff like that. So to this day, I try to be comfortable with my life. I'm still traditional. I go back to the old healing ways. Then I go to church also. I believe in both sides. But it seems to me like my mind and my body tends to lean toward the traditional ways, back to the old days, because that seems to be more comfortable to me than reading the Bible. It's about the same. The traditional ways and the Christian way, it's the same. The stories. We have a being, and then from the Christian side, there's also Christ. It's the same. Pray to the same thing. So that's how I grew up. And let me go back to my little boy school years. I was punished so many times that I ran away about 3 times. One time the snow was about 3 feet deep. And I asked these other little kids, I said, which way is home? I want to go back. Because they made me stand in the corner with my arms out like this. After about, for a little kid, doing this for about 5 minutes, you just drop. So they look at you and they say, you're going to be doing that all the week, like this, They punish me. So, and then I said, well, I'm going to run away tonight. There's the moonlight, but there was snow. But I went anyway. I followed this road. And I guess they missed me when they were doing the head count, that I wasn't in my bed. They asked everybody where I was, and then one of the kids said, oh, he went out the door. He was going that way. So they got the tribal police and some of the bigger boys, and they were tracking me which way I went. And it must have been about 1 o'clock. I got cold, and I burrowed into this snowbank and went way inside it. And it was warm in the snow, so that's how I kept warm. Then I thought, the Eskimos do this, so I was in there, and my warm breath, I kind of melted the walls, so I kind of hided it, and it looked like a real nice hot egg, inside. And the next day, when I got out, somebody saw me. They brought me back, and I was punished more. So I had to run the belt line again, where they took their belts off. Each kid take a swing at you. That's how I grew up. And like I said, the best years of my life was right here. All this beautiful mountain, and I still remember some of these trees that were still here, but only they were smaller. Especially these junipers. They're hard. Some of the roads and the springs are still there. The rocks where I used to climb around in and play on, they're still here. They never change. So we had sheep. I had pet lambs and pet goats. You know, those were the fun times of my growing up years. But you know, even it takes me back to there. But right now, you know, this is fun to me doing this, helping Bigfoot research team to find Bigfoot here. And if we do find it, I would like to be one of the person that will say, oh yeah, he helped find and he helped track it. You know. So that's why I'm here tonight with you guys.
Well, I'm sure glad you're here with us tonight because this is a real education for me, and I feel honored to be able to meet you and hear your story.
But I know about this area. I know you guys are curious about this area, the land, you know, and the people, and so I share it with you guys. So I hope your family will enjoy what I'm saying.
I'm sure they will. I can't wait to show this to my grandkids and let them see.
They'll enjoy it, yeah.
Because they have no idea. No idea.
So
all they know is modern, you know?
Right. I worked hard at my job and it brought me so far, thus far. And a lot of people my age, you know, they hardly get around. They're sick, and a lot of them have diabetes, and they got their legs amputated and stuff like that. Younger than me. So I'm thankful for, you know, the how I grew up, and a lot of exercise, good food, you know, eating good. I left the bad things alone. I never bothered those. But some kids got into it, like alcohol and stuff like that. I never did. So,
well, I know even today that your friends refer to you as Chief Walks a Lot.
I leave them way behind.
Yes, they can't keep up with you anymore.
Yeah.
So even the young men out here say, don't try and keep up with Leonard Dan, because he'll just leave you behind.
So yeah, I'm thankful for the way I grew up, and even though it was, like I said, hard times for me, but you know, we all go through that, whether it's physical or spiritually, you know. So I've got a lot of friends here. I'm happy.
Wow. That's good.
That's all. Good night.
Thank you. Thank you so much.
Yeah.
I didn't remember how to turn this off there.
Well, man, we J's been left on.